I want to go to the News Center tonight and welcome in two NewsNation political contributors and Democratic strategist Chris Hahn and also Denise Gitsham, who's a former Republican congressional candidate out in California. Both of you on that point, which we seem to get to after an incident like this very quickly. Denise, you want to take this first? Rhetoric, blame, however you want to phrase it.
Well, this is what happens when you go from saying I'm right and you're wrong to I'm good and you're evil. It basically minimizes others, people you disagree with, their humanity, and it puts a target on their backs, as evidenced by the 10x increase in politically violent rhetoric over the past decade. And you know, this isn't just happening to President Trump. My friend Senator Tim Scott actually had to double his security because he got so many threats when he ran for president. And it's disgusting and vile, and it will not stop until we all take personal responsibility for what we say, and we demand the same accountability from our leaders.
Yeah, and what I meant, Chris, is that we've had this conversation before. I can clearly remember having it with you. Whether it was Charlie Kirk or whatever the case may be. What do you say today?
Well, Denise is spot on, and I appreciate the fact that she didn't say, we don't do it and you do it, which I think, unfortunately, in today's media environment, most elected officials are only concerned about speaking to their base. We have a pox on both our houses. I mean, I might get some pushback for it. I don't care. I've said this to you before. The rhetoric in this country is far too heated, and Denise is absolutely right. The good versus evil conversation, the dehumanization of political opponents in America is horrible. And it is absolutely impacting those people with mental issues who are then deciding to take it upon themselves. And we already live in a country where people think the way to settle your differences is with violence. And I think this is becoming too much. And I think it's incumbent on everyone to own their own rhetoric. And that goes for the president. That goes for the members of Congress on both sides of the aisle. That goes for pundits like Denise and I. And I've had this conversation with you before. I've been thinking about it. I think about it all the time, and I try my best to avoid it. And sometimes you get in these debates, it gets a little heated. But, I consider most of the people I debate here, almost all the people, my friends. So I think that, I think that people need to hear the other side more and understand that we are all people with families and goals, and we want what's best for this country. Maybe we have a different way of doing it, but I think that that's something that needs to be front and center in our politics.
One more word on this. What about the both sides component, Denise? I hear frustration from some partisans politically. I was looking online earlier. They say, oh, it's not both sides. It's only the left, or people on the left. Oh, it's only the right. What would you say about that?
Well, it's just pointing the fingers and not solving the problem. Those people are pundits for a reason. They can't actually lead, and we shouldn't be funding or supporting or listening to anyone like that. We have so many of those idiots on our side of the fence, and so does Chris on his side. And what I love so much about people like Chris is, and Chris in particular, is that, we disagree all the time, vehemently on camera, but we know we can affirm each other's humanity and say, you know what, I still believe that you have America's best interest in mind, even if we disagree about how we get there. And if we don't have those sorts of just really intentional sort of statements that are thrown into what it is that we're saying, or we don't treat each other with respect, then we are part of the problem. And God forgive me for every time that I've done that. I know I'm not perfect, but I'm going to ask God to help me be better because it's so critical.
So what about the practical side of all of this as well, which you talked about a moment ago? But Chris Starwald on his show over the weekend had a question for a former Secret Service agent about what maybe we should rethink at some of these events. Take a listen.
Do we need to rethink the idea that we'd have a dozen people in the line of presidential succession in one room?
Yeah, I think your point is spot on, Chris. This is something that we probably need to be looking at going forward. President Trump does seem to have a lot of cabinet members in and around very events that he does, and I don't seem to remember that with other presidents that I've been with.
Chris Hahn, we'll take that one first. I mean, there was a lot of people at that event Saturday night in the line of succession.
Well, I agree with the president that you can't hide under a rock, right? I think that elected officials are public people and they should be out with the public. But I do think that the security measures need to be tightened. Look, the security worked. Do I think the perimeter should have been outside the building? Sure. But the security did work on Saturday night. They did not get to the president or any of the people in the line of succession. But I do think that the president and the vice president need to keep their distance from events that are outside of the perimeter of government-controlled buildings. And this building, you know, where Reagan was shot in the 80s, and I've been there, Denise has been there, you know, that's a basement. And I don't know that the president and the cabinet and the vice president and the Speaker of the House, they all need to be in the same basement. That just doesn't seem safe to me.
Some of that'll change, Denise, you think, or?
You know, I don't know. I've been to the National Prayer Breakfast there too, where we have heads of state and honestly, like presidents, kings, queens, like of countries I've never even heard of. And then half of Congress is there, right? I mean, it's a huge political event above and beyond just being a place where people talk about prayer. And so, you know, I was also at Correspondents' Dinner with NewsNation in 2024. Senator Fetterman was sitting at our table. I don't know how that guy got in and out because it was so tight. The one place that we never have to worry about everyone being in the same place is the White House because it's so tightly, so secure. And, you know, it is sad that we even have to talk about the fact that people can't gather who are all leaders of our country. But this really does make the case for why we should have, I don't care about ballroom rhetoric. What I care about is the ability to have an event where you actually can have everyone there, and these questions, these sad questions reflecting on the state of our society, don't have to be asked anymore.
Yeah, Fetterman, who you mentioned, his thought for Democrats, Chris, was something like, oh, you drop the Trump derangement syndrome stuff and don't put up such a fight about the ballroom.
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't think now's the time to be debating whether or not there should be a White House ballroom. The White House ballroom is going to take a while to be built, if it gets built at all. I think that there should be a process, not just one person deciding to tear down the East Wing. I think that's the bigger issue than whether or not we need a ballroom. Administrations on both sides of the aisle were frustrated with the space at the White House to host events, and there could have been a process to decide this. But that is not what the debate is really about. The debate is about how it was done, as is often the case right now. And I think that, yes, we got to find secure places where people can gather. And again, the security did work. I don't know why this was not classified as a top-tier national security event on Saturday night when you have that many people from the government in one space. It should have been. I think it will be in the future. And I think that we have to make sure that we get those things straight and get them right, because if you mess up once, it is a tragedy that we're going to have a hard time coming back.
Yeah, a bunch of people have brought up that distinction like you see at the inauguration or the Super Bowl or whatever it may be. Chris, Denise, thank you both.